Hey, welcome back to the Unbelievable Podcast. I am BJ Reidell, back here with my guy, Drew Mahowald, and today we are breaking down the impending matchup between the Minnesota Vikings and the Detroit Lions. So as we do typically during our Thursday show, this one's going to pop up on Friday because of the Vikings playing on Monday night this week. We'll do the breakdown, we'll give you our picks for the week, and that'll be just about it. We'll get things started with the Thursday question shortly here. Both of us apologize in advance because we're both sick now.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, and at some point you might get some car muffler sounds from us, and we apologize in advance for that. But the show must go on. So that is the game plan for today. So let's start her off here with the Thursday question. All right, let's do. If you were a ghost, what city would you haunt for eternity?
Oh my God. Okay.
I can't remember who I stole this one from, but I've been on Twitter and using taking people's jokes on Twitter and kind of reframing them as questions because I think they're more fun. I think this was a comedian that said this one.
Okay. Well, that pertains to our topics of discussion on the show. The Minnesota Vikings. It'd be fun to haunt like Green Bay or Philly.
Right.
In my own personal life, growing up in South Dakota, nobody liked Huron, South Dakota.
You can take haunt, like it doesn't need to be. I know it has a negative context, just the word haunt, but it could also just be like which city would you like to be a ghost in? Like it could be what city would you want to be a fly on the wall of?
Oh, okay.
That type of thing.
That's a little different.
So you could be Casper the Friendly Ghost if you want. I mean, if you want to go, truly haunting and, ruining lives, that's up to you too. That says a little something about your character, but it is what it is.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, it'd be kind of fun to just be like in Times Square all the time. I don't know. Just like see what weird people are doing,
Yep.
And ghosts don't smell, so like you can't smell how the garbage everywhere in Times Square. So
right, that's a good point.
I don't know. That's one thing if you like people watching, I think Times Square would be the place to go.
Yeah. So my initial thought was the same one as yours, that if I was a ghost, I'd obviously want to go to like Green Bay and make sure that like every extra point snap like sailed over the holder's head, But so what I did is I kind of combined that line of thinking along with the kind of the more fun, like you're saying, like a people watching type of thing. I think New Orleans would be the place that I'd want to haunt. Because I could rattle the Saints and continue to
Mardi Gras.
Yeah, and then Mardi Gras, exactly. Yeah, and I think that New Orleans in general is like a ghost city. Like I remember, I feel like I've heard people talk about ghosts in New Orleans like more often than like other cities. So I feel like I'd have some buddies down there too to like hang out with and get some phantom calls, no pun intended, on the Saints.
Yeah, pun intended.
Yeah, so I think that's probably the best place to go. But as far as being a ghost goes, I mean, I'd like to travel everywhere and mess with everyone, because like how much fun would that be, honestly, to just like nobody can tell that you're there and you just get to do whatever you want. No one can stop you, and if they try to stop you, they sound crazy.
Yeah,
that's the dream right there. So. All right, that's the Thursday question. If you'd like to respond yourself, feel free to comment in the Daily Norseman comment section below, or send us on Twitter at unbelievable_MN. And from there, let's jump into this breakdown here. So, Vikings are going up against the Detroit Lions at home, up at US Bank Stadium this week. It is a rematch from earlier this season in which the Vikings got a 42-30 victory at Ford Field. Generally speaking, when we do these breakdowns, these weekly breakdowns on teams, it gets a little bit repetitive with the divisional matchups because obviously it's the same team. But Detroit is a very, very different team from when the Vikings saw them, what was it, week 6, I believe?
Yeah. Well, obviously a lot of that's due to the quarterback position.
Right. That's the main thing. But also the offensive playmakers have changed a little bit as well. So obviously it starts with Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford is not expected to play. I have no reason to believe that he's going to play again this year based off of where the Lions are at. If you're not familiar, he broke a couple bones in his lower back and tried to play through it, which not advisable when when you only have 3 wins and it's week 14. So I would not expect Matthew Stafford out there. That means that the Vikings will get the rookie out of Purdue, 24-year-old David Blau, who actually put on a show last Thursday.
I was impressed.
I was very, very impressed.
Yeah, the Bears defense is still formidable, and I wouldn't say picked them apart, but
the first couple drives he definitely did.
He took advantage of every mistake that they made, which, that's something that you hear a lot about, like veterans, right? Like you hear about the veterans or the more experienced quarterbacks kind of taking what the defense gives them type of thing, and finding the holes in their defense, and that's exactly what David Blau did. So. And he's got 2 really good weapons for sure on the outside with Galladay and Marvin Jones, who, by the way, Marvin Jones, 4 touchdowns last time against the Vikes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, after I said that he sucked again.
Yeah.
So I'm not gonna say it. I'm not gonna say that this time. I probably don't. I might.
Probably don't.
So Blau makes his first start in the NFL. Like I said, he's a 24-year-old rookie. He played his college football at Purdue. He was an undrafted free agent. That's basically all there is to know about David Blau. He's no superstar by any means. He doesn't have the measurables. There's no superstar quality to him. He's not a fun personality from what I've seen from his press conferences. He's just a guy, and he's out there, and he gets the start last week on Thursday, Thanksgiving, against Chicago, which, in my opinion, is probably the second to last team I'd want to play in my first start, behind only San Francisco's defensive line. I mean, Chicago has all the playmakers. They take advantage of your mistakes, generally speaking. They have Chuck Pagano's a solid defensive coordinator who takes advantage of, the tendencies of young players and players who, don't have much experience in the league. And Blau showed up there, and he threw all over the field. And I think that, the point that you made about the playmakers that he has on the outside, that really was a big difference. I mean, Kenny Galladay has come on very strong the last several weeks, despite the fact that the Lions have not been doing much winning lately.
Right, and I mean, Galladay's always been a stud, I think.
Right.
And so
Babytron or whatever the hell they call him.
Is that what they call him?
Babytron, I think.
Something it makes sense. He's kind of got a little bit of that skill set. Obviously, not nearly what.
There is no such thing as a Calvin Johnson equivalent, but this is pretty close. If you look at his measurables.
Yeah, he's that type of player where kind of he wins contested catches. He's a big body. And then Marvin Jones wins with route running too, I think. So he's got great weapons to use, and they've both beaten the Vikings, in the past. Jones really essentially has 2 elite games against the Vikings and then kind of mediocre games around that. And Galladay's always just a tough cover anyway. So the team is obviously a lot different than when the Vikings beat them in Detroit, but they're not to be disregarded, I guess, because if Blau can play like that against Chicago's defense, I would consider Minnesota's defense right now a lot worse than Chicago's.
I think a lot of people would agree with you on that.
Yeah. So in some ways, I see it as a get-right game for the defense because you got a very inexperienced quarterback going on the road for the first time in a stadium that's tough to play in. You get that element to it, but also, he handled a really good defense pretty darn well on Thanksgiving, and it's also plausible that he, can put up another good performance like that against the Vikings defense that has been reeling.
It is also worth noting that the first-round draft pick of the Detroit Lions, T.J. Hawkinson, out of Iowa, will be missing this game. He was placed on IR earlier this week. He will not return this season. So that's another difference that you'll see here. Yep. Jesse James and Logan Thomas, the former Virginia Tech quarterback. For those of you who followed the draft, 3 years ago? I remember the Logan Thomas brigade of people being like, no, he's not a tight end. Well, folks, he is a tight end. That's what he is now. And he's probably the starter because Jesse James is not that great. So those are the 2 tight ends that will be replacing T.J. Hawkinson. Considerably less athleticism out of Jesse James. Logan Thomas, though, he's a force. I don't know why he was a quarterback ever. He's just a huge human being. He looks like a tight end. So I would keep an eye on him. He's the type of player that, if you're going to make that weird conversion from quarterback to skill player, he's the type of guy that can do that. So keep an eye on him for sure. The other major changes in the backfield. Bo Scarborough is finally getting a chance in the NFL. If you remember correctly, he is, I believe, a sixth-round pick out of Alabama. He has not, for whatever reason, I never understood this because he was a beast at Alabama. Running people over left and right. He looked like kind of a Derrick Henry light based on his stature and his running style.
Yeah.
And he kept getting cut over and over and over and over again. And Detroit has had some problems at the running back position this year. Injuries have been, haven't helped at all. Ty Johnson has not had any success when given the opportunity. J.D. McKissick is basically your Theo Riddick of 2019, so he's not a between-the-tackles rusher. There's not a whole lot that you're going to get out of him from a rushing perspective. But Scarborough, man, I mean, if you've watched his last few games, he's not the most efficient runner in the world. He's not going to be a guy that's going to get you, 8, 9, 10-yard carries consistently. But if you want 4 yards, I mean, this is the guy right here. He is a goal line back. He kind of looks like, honestly, like he has the feel of Derrick Henry. I see some Jerome Bettis in him. Obviously, I'm comparing him to.
You're comparing legendary players,
right?
So
and I'm doing that to exaggerate the skill set here. I'm not saying he is those players. I'm saying that's the type of skill set that he has. He's a solid, probably. I would say he's a two-down back in the NFL. I haven't seen much out of him in terms of being a receiver, but he can definitely run between the tackles, and he mirrors a lot of what Chris Carson's running style was, and we saw what he did last week against the Vikings.
Yeah, this is true. The Vikings' interior defensive line was destroyed. So, and he is one of those runners that he'll fall forward every time, and he'll pretty much pick up positive yards for the most part. So, that is going to be another X factor to watch. I'm not as concerned about, I think Seattle's running game as a whole is obviously much more dangerous.
They scheme it better too.
Yeah, but I do think Scarborough, again, like you were saying, is the type of running back that has given the Vikings some problems. So that'll be another thing to watch too. And I'm sure that they will try to get that involved to keep Blau as comfortable as possible.
Just as I say that the scheme is a little bit different, it's probably worth noting that the offensive coordinator for Detroit is Darrell Bevell, who most recently, of course, worked in Seattle.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
So you actually, I should probably change my thought process there. You'll probably see a lot of the same style that you saw last week against Seattle, based off of the tendencies that.
I would imagine the blocking schemes are similar, but
yeah.
I think obviously when you have Russell Wilson, that you have the option to do kind of that zone read stuff, or a lot more looks out of shotgun. When you kind of give that the threat of Wilson using his feet a little bit more versus a less mobile guy. You don't see Stafford, or you haven't seen Stafford doing a whole lot of that. Mm-hmm. Driscoll either. You didn't see a whole lot of that from those guys. So I think that's where I think it might differ, and maybe that gives a little bit more of a unpredictability type of thing for Seattle that maybe Detroit doesn't quite have.
Yeah, that's certainly the case. The offensive line remains the same from what we talked about several weeks ago. The big guys on the outside, Taylor Decker, former first-round pick, Taylor Decker. Sorry about that. Ricky Wagner, the big free agent signing from a couple of years ago, coming back out from Baltimore. And the interior, Joe Dahl, Frank Ragnow, a former favorite prospect of yours, I believe, Frank Ragnow.
Yeah.
And then Graham Glasgow is the right guard. So that rounds out the 5 guys up front. Not a super formidable offensive line. In the Vikings' previous matchup, they were able to get to the quarterback just a whopping 2 times. And this probably won't shock you. The 2 sacks came from Danielle Hunter and Everson Griffin. So I would expect to see the pressure coming off of the edge once again. The Vikings certainly need to get some interior pressure going, though. We talked about this a little bit on the last episode here. I think Armand Watts needs to be involved more. I think I feel like that's becoming sort of a popular opinion among Vikings fans. Based off of what we have seen in terms of creating pressure on pass rushing downs from Shamar Stephen, Jaleel Johnson, and kind of a bit of a crippled Linval Joseph, who certainly just does not look the same as he did 2 years ago, and obviously he's coming off of that surgery. So maybe he'll look a little bit better after another week removed from that surgery. But
yeah, he's still trying to catch his breath from that touchdown last year.
That's a good point. So that is basically what you're going to see from this offense. The big playmakers, of course, Kenny Golladay on the outside. That matchup with Xavier Rhodes, that's dangerous. Rhodes has never fared too well against Jones or Galladay, but if Rhodes is obviously not having too hot of a season, and the last couple of weeks have sort of been the epitome of what he has become. And both of these wide receivers have made him look foolish in the past. So that's probably the matchup to watch there. I would also keep an eye, like I said, on Bo Scarborough, the way that they try to use him, pounding the rock, especially if Detroit gets a lead. But that's basically what you're going to be looking at for playmakers here.
Yeah, for sure. And I think overall, I mean, again, Detroit's offense isn't like otherworldly or too terribly concerning or anything, especially against Seattle, comparing the two. But, there are pieces to watch for. I think Danny Amendola, too, is another guy that I think he was pretty effective against the Vikings last time. He got loose, I think, on a blown coverage once. And
he had 105 yards and 8 receptions against the Vikings.
So that's another guy to watch for. And for what it's worth, the Vikings seem to kind of control the passing game. Like Lockett didn't do anything against the Vikings for Seattle. So like their slot guy didn't do a whole lot. But again, we've seen with the secondary, guys can get loose when they maybe aren't expecting it, or maybe they're getting more open than they should be. So I really am concerned about that trio of receivers between Jones, Galladay, and Amendola. I think that's a group that all of them have in the past had success against the Vikings and had big games before. So this is an opportunity for that secondary to kind of prove that they still are, one of the, they still can play and they still can keep this team competitive with the defense versus relying now kind of where how the script has flipped a little bit in 2019 to where the Vikings are relying on offense to win games versus in the past few years it's been the defense.
That trio, by the way, 19 receptions, over 200 yards, and 4 touchdowns last time against the Vikings. So
yeah, well, all 4 touchdowns from Marvin Jones.
Yeah, that's true. He had 10 receptions and 93 yards as well. So this could very well be another shootout. The Vikings were able to get the best of Detroit last time. Hopefully, for Vikings fans' sake, the defense shows up a little bit more and they get a little bit of help from playing at home as well. So moving over to the defensive side of the football here. Detroit has actually got a little bit healthier since the last time we saw them on the defensive side of the ball. That starts up front with Mike Daniels is now in the rotation. He's actually played some football, which is good to see. I know he's a former Packer, but he's one of the funniest guys in the NFL. I root for him. You've also got Damon Harrison, Snacks as they call him, and A'Shawn Robinson up front. Those guys are going to be dangerous, especially with the way that the interior has played as of late, and really the whole season. Pat Elflein especially was not he was screwing up a lot of things the Vikings were trying to do last week, and I would kind of expect that to continue into this week.
Yeah, for sure. The Vikings offense is going to be – I'm not worried about them scoring points in this game. I'm really not. Even when it seemed like, they were very conservative against Seattle, at least in the first half, and they were still able to put up points. I think they put up really 10 points before that game. Before things kind of got desperate, so to speak. Offensively, they had the pick six, and then you had 10 points through the offense. And it seems like the Vikings are moving the ball pretty easily, even when they don't get aggressive. They're able to run the ball pretty well. Madison, I like him as a runner too. When if Dalvin is limited in any fashion, so I'm not worried about the Vikings putting up points against this defense, even with some of those guys getting healthy on Detroit's side of the ball there. I don't respect Detroit's defense very much at all. And, we'll get back to, you mentioned a shootout. We'll get back to that in the lock of the week, but that's a little sneak peek there. But overall, I like the Vikings to score some points in this game, especially at home.
Yeah. So the playmakers here, if you remember from the last time we talked about this, Trey Flowers, who came over from New England.
Yep.
The big defensive end, basically a pure edge rusher. That's what he does best. He's going to get after Kirk Cousins, especially if Riley Reiff is not on the field or is limited on the field.
That's true.
So keep an eye on that specifically. You've also got the cornerbacks. Darius Slay, one of the best in the business. The Vikings did fairly well against him the last time they saw him, but historically Darius Slay has been a menace against the Vikings offense. So I never count him out of the game. He's as dangerous as they come if you make a mistake. And for as good as Kirk Cousins has been keeping the football in with the offense and not turning it over the last couple of weeks, if there is someone that can force a turnover from Kirk Cousins, Darius Slay is definitely one of those guys. He's right up there with him. And then they've got the former Viking, Justin Coleman, who plays primarily nickel, but you can also see him moving out and towards kind of a safety position. He's all over the place, and he's really become a hell of a player since the Vikings cut him. I believe the first training camp that I did, what was that, 2014 or something like that? So there's a lot of revenge games just going around here between Darrell Bevell, Justin Coleman, and I don't know how I overlooked this, but this is also a Kyle Sloter revenge game.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Who was recently signed.
That's right. Well, he's going to be their QB2, I believe, right?
Yeah.
So obviously we don't want to see an injury to Blau or anything, but
there's a lot of Vikings fans that would love to see.
I would certainly be more interested in this game if Sloter was playing quarterback for Detroit at some point. But yeah, I mean, you got Darius Slay is obviously a guy who I believe he actually made the interception in I think it was a Thanksgiving game a few years ago with Bradford at quarterback, where that kind of sealed the game for the Lions. So they don't call him Big Play Slay for like no reason. He comes up with those plays. He'll jump the routes. If you're getting lazy with a throw or lazy with the stem of the route, he's going to make that play. So that's obviously probably going to be the test for probably Diggs. I don't know if Thielen's going to play this week. It sounds like he missed practice Wednesday and Thursday. So
they didn't rule him out yet, but I would not. I would not expect him to play.
Zimmer always, whether a guy's going to play or not, he always tries to leave it as cloudy as possible, so the other team doesn't know what they're doing. But maybe Laquan Treadwell will bust open for the most wide open touchdown of all time again. Who knows? But I mean, the Vikings put up points easily last time against this team, really without Thielen for 90% of the game. So it's just I really like the way this offense is playing, and I don't see this team having a problem moving the ball against Detroit. I really don't.
Yeah.
So it's not, again, you're right. They have a little bit more talent this time around. Daniels is back, but they're just giving up points with ease to really everybody they play. They made Mitch Trubisky look like a superstar on Thanksgiving. So
they did.
That tells me that if Trubisky can put up like 350 and a couple touchdowns, and he made everything was wide open for him, and it seemed like it was pretty easy for him. So I like Minnesota to move the ball quite a bit.
Yeah, I don't think anyone would blame you for having that take, given that arguably the best performance of Kirk Cousins' Vikings career came a couple weeks ago against Detroit. Remember, 338, 4 touchdowns, nearly a 10 yards per attempt average. Dalvin Cook also got loose for 142 and a pair of touchdowns. Stephon Diggs, 7 for 143. I mean, the stats are kind of off the charts. All the playmakers were involved. I believe this was also Irv Smith's strongest performance of his rookie season. He had 5 catches for 60 yards as well. Yeah. So
it looks like a stat sheet from like a college overtime game. That
it really does.
5 overtimes, because you got Kirk throwing for 350 and 4 touchdowns. You got Dalvin rushing for 140 and 2 touchdowns. And you got 4 different Vikings catching touchdowns, and Diggs was not one of them.
Yeah, shockingly.
So, yeah, I mean,
he does have history too against Detroit and the NFC North as a whole.
Yeah, so I mean, if the Vikings can avoid that slow start like they had against Denver, which honestly could be a lot of that in part to Vic Fangio's defense, but if they can avoid that slow start, I don't see any situation where they don't put up 30 points in this game.
Yeah, I agree. Typically don't mention the special teams when we do these breakdowns, but we have to mention Matt Prater. Because he can hit.
I've never seen him miss. I've never seen him miss.
He, especially against the Vikings too.
Right.
He definitely brings his. He brings his best when he's playing against Minnesota. He can hit from 60 plus. Seems like every kick that he sends up is 15 yards through the uprights. So, I mean, if special teams probably will not have a huge impact on this game. I don't necessarily expect this to be a very close one, but if Matt Prater's lining up for a game-tying or game-winning field goal from inside of 50 yards this Sunday, not confident in the Vikings' chances. So just something Something to keep an eye on, I suppose.
Matt Prater is, I'm looking at his splits against every team right now. He is 16 of 16 all-time extra points
there you go.
against the Vikings, and he is 27 for 31.
31, okay.
On normal field goals. That's 87%. So pretty darn good. It's not like best of all time type of thing, but I'm actually surprised he's missed 4 against the Vikings. That seems like it's way too high.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm looking at the rest of the league and his opponents. It seems like he's as successful against the Vikings really as he is against anybody. So, the one exception is with the teams that have a solid sample size, the Giants, he's 10 for 11, but otherwise, and then you got the Bears, he's 24 for 27. So, he beats up on the NFC North because he's also 21 for 25 against the Packers. So, he knows what he's doing, that's for sure.
He's about as good as it gets outside of Justin Tucker, basically.
Right.
So.
Yeah, he's certainly in the top 5, I would say.
All right, let's wrap up this segment with one question here, because we are late in the season now, so we have entered into the territory where coaches start to get fired. We just saw Ron Rivera go in Carolina. I don't know if Matt Patricia makes it another week if he gets blown out by the Vikings again. Now, let me give you my reasoning behind that. One, he's a defensive coach, okay? He allowed 42 points to the Vikings the first time around. Like you said, he made Mitch Trubisky look like an MVP candidate last week. He has not been successful defensively despite the Detroit franchise doing everything and anything to get him playmakers on the defensive side of the ball that fit within his scheme. You know, paying all that money to Trey Flowers.
Right.
They've tried to give him every asset that he wants. He's had every opportunity to kind of turn this defense around. And the Lions are not only not winning games, but the kind of the forte of their head coach.
They're 30th in pass defense. They're 23rd in rush defense. They are 30th in first downs allowed defensively.
Okay, so there you go. So that's my question then. You've got the information now. Does Matt Patricia make it through this game if, let's say, the Vikings win this one, they put up 35 and win this game? Does Matt Patricia make it next week?
See, at this point, I feel like they would have fired him already because they're out of playoff contention, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think if they're going to fire him, it's going to be after the season.
That's a fair point. So the reason why I bring this up is because they do have Darrell Bevell on their staff who could easily step in and all of a sudden...
I don't disagree. And it seems like, offensive head coaches are becoming more and more of the trend on teams that are, successful. Kyle Shanahan, obviously Sean Payton in New Orleans has been the guy forever.
Yep.
You can go on and on with the list there, but offensive gurus, so to speak, are taking the league by storm. Obviously, Matt Patricia is a defensive coach, and B, his defense stinks. So not a great combination for your head coach. So I really think he's, at this point, unless they string together some wins down the stretch, I think he's done after the season. But I think they would have let him go by now if they were going to in the season.
Also, C, he does not have a great reputation within the media either, which doesn't really help. I'm sure Miss Ford is not a huge fan of the perception of Matt Patricia.
And for what it's worth, the situation is a little bit like Carolina, right? Started off the season pretty well, like they were competitive. I think wasn't Detroit 2-0-1 or something after 3 games.
Yeah, and they should have been 3-0.
Yep, you're right. And then their starting quarterback goes down, backup quarterback comes in there, and then they kind of struggle, and now they're quickly out of the playoff picture, right? That's kind of how Carolina is. They were, what were they, 4-2, 5-2?
They won 4 straight, or what was it, 5 straight with Kyle Allen at quarterback, and then fell off a cliff there.
And then quickly it fell apart. The defense is struggling. Rivera, defensive coach, Patricia, defensive coach. So I definitely see the possibility of him getting fired after this game. I would assume, my thought is they're going to do that after the season, but it's not a crazy take.
I don't believe that Detroit is historically a team that likes to fire coaches mid-season either, by the way. They don't have they're not trigger happy in that regard.
Honestly, they probably should have just kept Jim Caldwell.
They probably should have, but apparently winning one playoff game, in what was it, 5 or 6 years?
Was it? I think he was fired after like a 9-7 season.
After winning, I think he won a playoff game. And then it was either the season after he won that playoff game, or
I think it was the season after. But still, I think he ended that
He's the
season
only coach
was
that's won a
9-7.
playoff game, or that's even made the. No, they didn't even win. I don't think he even won the playoff game, to be honest.
No, I don't think they did.
But he's the only coach to get them to the postseason.
Yeah, because I think they went in 2013 and 2016.
Yeah.
And then I think it must have been after 2017 he was fired.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they probably should have kept him. It's not looking good. So, anyways, that about wraps up our breakdown here of Detroit. We can move right into our picks here, starting with the Vikings and Lions here. What is give me your game prediction as well as the margin of victory for the winning team.
I do have the Vikings winning this game, but I do think Detroit covers. I think Detroit's going to put up points, whether it's garbage time or whether those receivers beat up the Vikings secondary.
Yep.
But I think overall, it's going to come down to Blau just making a mistake or two that's enough to make this, like a 10-point game. So I think it's going to be something, 34-24 or something like that. But I think the Vikings will come away victorious.
Yeah, the Vikings have been putting up points like crazy as of late. Really, I mean, this has been a team that is scoring 30 on a regular basis now, which is something that, do you remember when we were just trying to get to 21?
Yeah, remember that being the X factor for the Vikings. Like, if you get 21, you're going to win, and if you're not, then you're going to probably take the loss. But look at their scoring. 30 against Seattle, 27-28. Kansas City was 23, and they had 42 against Detroit, 38 against Philly, 28 against the Giants. Get 34 against the Raiders. So they had, there's a couple duds in there. Obviously, the Redskins game was just weird because they had the ball for like 50 minutes, burning out as much clock as possible. And then the Chicago game. And really, outside of those games, they're putting up close to 30 on every occasion. So
yeah, I see that happening.
Detroit at home, it seems like that's very likely to happen again.
Yep. I'll take the Vikings here. I'm with you. I think that this will be a high-scoring game. I'll take the Vikings by, I'll say 10. I think the Vikings get into the 30s again, but I do think that the Vikings defense allows Detroit to get into the 20s.
That's exactly how I feel about this game. So.
That seems to be kind of the way that the Vikings have been rolling as of late. It's been the Kirk Cousins show and the defense just trying to do enough. And unfortunately, it looks like that doesn't seem to be changing anytime soon. So both of us are on for Minnesota. That would put the Vikings in pole position to continue their march towards the postseason with a victory here. It's also an important division win. I know it's Detroit, but it's a division win, and that's important if, for example, Green Bay decides to go ahead and lose to Chicago next week. So this game doesn't.
Detroit. I think they have Chicago and Detroit left on their schedule.
They do.
Still. So
just keep that in mind.
Either one of those games. It would be nice if Green Bay lost. In addition to the Vikings beating them Week 16.
Absolutely. So, all right, let's keep it rolling here with the Thursday night game. A couple hours away from when we're recording. By the time you listen to this, I imagine this game will be over. But Dallas is heading to Chicago. Dallas is trying to get back on track. Chicago is actually playing the best football of its season, I'd say. I
think both these teams are frauds. So it sucks because I don't like picking either one of them. I'm not confident in either one of them.
I don't like either of these teams either. In fact, this is not a fun game to watch.
Because we can say that the Chicago's playing good football, but here's what's going on. They let's see. I'm looking at their schedule. So they've won 3 of 4 games, right?
Mm-hmm.
They beat Detroit Week 10 by 7 at home.
Mm-hmm.
Then they went to the Rams and lost by 10. And then they've won 2 straight games, home against the Giants by 5, and then Detroit on Thanksgiving. So, they've won 3 of 4, but 2 of those were against Detroit. 1 was at home against the Giants by 1 possession.
By a hair.
So it's not like I'm super impressed by them. I don't like Dallas either because I also think they're reeling quite a bit. But I'm going to pick Dallas in this game, basically because I still trust Dak to make plays at the end of the game more than I trust Mitch Trubisky.
Yep, I'm on the exact same page. I'll take the quarterback here. Give me Dak Prescott every single day of the week and 5 times on Sunday.
This is also a game or a battle of teams that may or may not be firing their coaches at the end of the season here.
That's a good point.
Garrett certainly his seat is a little bit hotter than Nagy's, but it's definitely both are coaches to watch for their jobs here.
Expectations were a lot higher than where they stand right now. So both of us are going Dallas. Moving on to this next one here. The Ron Rivera-less Carolina Panthers will head to Atlanta, Atlanta is
weird.
Kind of, yeah. That's what they are. That's what they are.
Yep.
But I do think they're going to win this
picking
game.
Atlanta in this game. Yeah, I think at home. That's really why I'm picking them. They're at home, and Carolina they're struggling mightily. Maybe the new head coaching or the coaching change will, spark something. But I'm going to go with Atlanta for now. And is Dan Quinn still coaching there?
Yeah.
Because maybe that's another guy that he probably should have been fired already. But
there might be a lot of coaching changes this offseason. I feel like a lot of teams
there will be
because of the mediocrity below the top 6. So
Cleveland for sure, right? I mean, they're not going to make the playoffs probably.
I mean, as we work through these game picks, I'm sure there will be a couple.
We'll note them for sure.
So I'm going Atlanta as well. I'm picking the home team in a divisional matchup, and like you said, Carolina's in a free fall. I don't trust Kyle Allen. He's not a good quarterback. Sorry, guys. Next one here. This one should be an entertaining game, especially coming off of a big win for Buffalo. They're hosting the Lamar Jackson Ravens this week. So you've got a great defense with plenty of playmakers that has been consistently underrated and very, very good throughout the year against a revolutionary offense and a revolutionary playmaker in Lamar Jackson.
I got the Ravens, and I'm kind of on what I say about the Patriots, where they have only beaten up on bad teams and then they struggle against good teams. I think Buffalo's the same way, and I do not classify the Dallas win as being a good team because I don't think Dallas is that good. So I'm going Baltimore, and I think it'll be kind of a blowout, to be honest.
Yep. Well, if anyone can dissect this Buffalo defense, it's probably the one guy who runs an offense that literally no one in history has ever ran, and that's Lamar Jackson. So I'm going to take Baltimore as well. I do not see this being a very good passing game, though. I don't think that the receivers for Baltimore can do a whole lot against this Buffalo secondary. Tre'Davious White, by the way, one of the most underrated players in the entire NFL.
Yep.
He's really, really good. So if you've got was it Hollywood Brown on your fantasy team, leave him on the bench for the playoffs.
I got a question for you, BJ. In a Minute Fantasy League, playoffs start this week, right? I have a flex situation I need your input on as someone who doesn't think there's going to be a lot of passing in this game. John Brown or Devin Singletary?
Ooh.
PPR. John Brown gets a lot of targets.
I'm saying I would say John Brown because, for one, he is also another one of the most underrated. Buffalo is just like, they're filled with these guys that are just like, they're not prototypical. So it's like,
they're not big names.
Exactly. And they don't fit the mold of what you like, like Tre'Davious White is like not flashy, and then you've got John Brown, who is undersized and a route runner technician, but then he's also a burner and just no one ever really there's a reason why he's called Smokey, and yet no one thinks of his speed as like being an asset. I would start John Brown because I think that, like you said, Buffalo is going to be probably trying to play catch up here.
That's true.
So I would expect.
I have a scapegoat now for when that goes wrong.
Yeah, well, my Deshaun Watson, Sam Darnold decision last week didn't go too.
That's right.
Well.
I remember advising you to start Watson because he's matchup proof.
Yep, and he proved it last week. It didn't cost me, thankfully, but that was not a good decision by me. So speaking of bad decisions, Cincinnati at Cleveland, watching this game would be a bad decision, I think.
I'll pick Cleveland, but I
mean, for Ohio.
Yeah, I'm not. I don't really care about this game too much. I was in on the Browns at the beginning of the season. I was in on the Browns basically until this week when they lost that game to Pittsburgh. Mm-hmm. Now I'm just done with them for this year.
I'm going Cleveland. Cincinnati has no incentive to win anymore. They just needed to get that monkey off the back so they weren't 0-16. Now they can just slowly march their way to drafting Joe Burrow number 1 overall. So I'm taking Cleveland, no doubt on that one. Another no-doubter here, Washington at Green Bay. I mean, this would be – I'm going to watch this game just for the slight potential that Green Bay stumbles because Washington's defense has played, a lot better than I think people give them credit for. But, I mean, this is pretty clearly going to be a Green Bay win, I think.
But Adrian Peterson has dominated the Packers in his career. So, hey.
It's worth noting, I suppose.
It's not really worth noting, but Packers are going to win.
All right, Green Bay for both of us. Moving on to the next one. This is probably the best game of the week, I think. San Francisco at New Orleans. The two of the top-seeded teams in the NFL right now. Well, actually, San Francisco's down to the 5 seed, unfortunately. But top teams in the NFL in terms of wins so far this season. San Francisco's kind of trying to prove their worth against this very difficult schedule to end their season. Yeah. And they're playing at the Superdome. Getting a win here would kind of prove that this is a good quality team.
And one of the things that to watch for down the stretch is San Francisco's schedule, because they play at the Superdome this week. I think the Saints are going to win this game.
I do too.
And then they have, they got Seattle again, and they got the Rams again too. So it's San Francisco could fall very much so to 12-4 or 11-5, which the Vikings still have a very realistic chance at that 5 seed. And then playing the NFC East champion, which would be a lot better than going to Lambeau or New Orleans or Seattle. So I like the Saints in this game, is what I'm saying. But again, that's another thing to watch for is San Francisco and their really tough schedule on the stretch.
Yeah, this is the rare case where you're going to want to root for New Orleans as a Vikings fan. I've got New Orleans in this game. I said at the beginning of the year that they were my Super Bowl pick. I'm holding on to that despite the concerns that I've seen show up throughout the year. New Orleans defense, by the way, pretty underrated as well. One of the they force a lot of turnovers. Marcus Lattimore is very quiet, so no one seems to recognize his growing greatness, I suppose. This New Orleans defense is for real too, so this could be a really low-scoring game. Might be a candidate for the under. Just keep that one in mind. So after that game, we got a real barn burner here in the AFC East. Miami heads to the New York Jets.
I don't care.
I don't think anyone cares. I don't think Dolphins or Jets fans care.
I feel like it'd be very Jets for them to just come out strong again and dominate, because they had 3 or 4 straight games where they won them all and they scored 30 points, and then they just laid the egg against Cincinnati. Yep. So I feel like they're gonna come back strong just because it's just weird.
So that mean you're taking the Jets in this one?
Yeah,
I'm taking Miami simply because Devontae Parker is a beast.
Yeah, that's
He's
true.
so good. He's making. When I was I remember one of the first big articles that I wrote for Bleacher Report was breaking down the 2015 wide receiver class with Kevin White, Amari Cooper, Devontae Parker, and I had the gall to rank Devontae Parker ahead of both Kevin White and Amari.
Well, it worked for one of those.
So yeah, but Parker's looking really good, and Ryan Fitzpatrick, by the way, if you're gonna have a dumpster fire organization, he's the right guy to lead your team.
Oh yeah. Because he still makes them fun and entertaining, and they're playing really hard in Miami.
Yeah.
Actually, he that Brian Flores has them playing. Yeah. There's a guy that's not getting fired.
Yeah. Despite only winning 3 games, and really he shouldn't have 3 wins. So.
Well, I think he's too good of a coach where they're winning games and they're trying not to. The organization is giving away all their assets.
Yeah.
And they're still competitive and winning games.
Yeah. Anyways, moving on to the next one here. Indianapolis, they are heading down to Tampa Bay. The Colts have not looked great as of late. Tennessee appears to be kind of taking over that number 2 spot with the eyes on Houston to win that division. Colts need this one big time. And Tampa Bay has been the ultimate roller coaster because Jameis Winston is going to keep you in every single game, but then also might break your back later on.
Yeah. He's going to keep you in games, and he's also going to give those games away. Mm-hmm. So
does he do that this week?
I have Tampa Bay winning this game, basically because they're at home. I think that's pretty much the only reason I'm picking them. Just they're at home.
I am taking Indianapolis. By the way, Colts are not even favored in this game. Tampa Bay is favored, which is crazy. We'll talk about that later on with my Gamble Lock of the Week.
Okay.
But I'm going to Indianapolis. I think that they're well coached. I mean, Frank Reich is awesome. So I think that they beat this team, despite, Tampa Bay is also fairly well coached. But the defense, I think the defense does just enough to slow down Godwin and Evans. So they have 0 running game, by the way. Ronald Jones is just straight trash. I'm sorry if you have him on your fantasy team, because I do. And I had to, my God. Anyways, moving forward here, Denver. Vic Fangio takes his defense up against Deshaun Watson in Houston, coming off probably the biggest win of Watson's career, I think, in New England. So does he keep it going here, or does Denver, continue to play tough and maybe squeak one out here?
I do think it'll be a close game. That Denver will play them tough, but I'm going to go with Houston to end up on top.
Yeah, I'm going with Houston as well. Deshaun Watson is my guy. If Lamar Jackson falls off a little bit, Deshaun Watson is right there for your MVP candidate. Next one here, Los Angeles Chargers. They head to Jacksonville. The Chargers are very, very upsetting because they have a quality roster. They have a good coach. They have a quarterback who is, I think he's still good. He does make some very questionable decisions, and he's certainly not the guy that he was a couple years ago. But Philly cheese can get you some victories, and
Philly cheese.
he has not been doing that as of late because they just keep charging. But I don't think that they can do that against Jacksonville, who, I mean, they do have Minshew back in there, but I mean, my God, Jacksonville.
I almost made Jacksonville my pick for lock of the week here because they're underdogs by 3 because they're at home, and the Chargers are, how many games in a row now have they lost in like the last possession? So
I think it's 4.
Yeah,
I've watched all of them too. It's the best TV on the weekend if you're not watching the Vikings.
That's true. But I'm going Jacksonville because I like Rudy for Gardner, and the Chargers just don't. It seems like it doesn't matter who they play. They're always just the same situation every single week. Chargers get the ball, last possession of the game, down by 3 or 4 with a chance to tie or win, and they don't get it done.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Chargers. I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm going with the Chargers. So there's that. Tennessee, your guys, they head to Oakland this week. Oakland is reeling. We've given Oakland a lot of props this year. I think that they've outperformed expectations, but as of late they are sliding. They need this one in a big way. They're playing at home. In the black hole there. Can Ryan Tannehill keep this thing going? I mean, he's getting to the point where he might earn himself a contract, like a nice contract.
A real contract. Yeah. Plus, Derrick Henry can't be tackled right now.
He's unreal. My God.
I'm going Tennessee.
Yeah, I'm going Tennessee as well. Derrick Henry, by the way, I believe I saw a stat. He's leading the NFL in rushing since week 15 of last year. He's crazy. I mean, do you remember his draft prospect status? The way that he was broken down, and everyone was just trying to find ways for him not to be good, and now he's literally untackleable.
Yeah,
he's crazy.
He is.
So him and Tannehill, they get it done in Oakland. Kansas City at New England. This is a pretty good week of football. Patrick Mahomes tries to get revenge against Tom Brady. They will be in Foxborough this weekend. Kansas City has kind of quietly continued to remain stable in the AFC. This would be a big win towards getting potentially a first round bye. I don't see it happening for them, but this would give them the opportunity to at least be in contention for that with the season winding down.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Kansas City in this game. It just seems like, again, the Patriots, when they play good teams, they struggle. I would consider Kansas City a good team. Houston was a good team. Baltimore a good team. And it's like, I don't know. It seems like New England's pretty easy to read for me. I mean, they'll struggle in a game where they give up a lot of points.
I agree. I'm going with Kansas City as well here. The big thing with this matchup is that if there's any coach in the NFL that can match Bill Belichick shot for shot, it's probably Andy Reid. So I'm going to take Kansas City here. The legend of Pat Mahomes continues to grow after this week.
Yep.
Pittsburgh at Arizona. I mean, Pittsburgh, I feel like I pick against them every single week, and yet they continue to find ways to win. They've got Kyler Murray this week. I believe Duck Hodges is under center once again. They get their offensive lineman back off of suspension. I think Juju Smith-Schuster is a candidate to return as well. James Washington is playing the best football of his career. Mike Tomlin's got to be a candidate for Coach of the Year as well. I mean, the things that he has done with this roster is extremely impressive. Can they get it done in the desert this weekend?
I'm picking Arizona. That's more of a gut feeling than anything else because, I don't know, I like Arizona more than I should. And like even before the season, I picked them to finish second in that division, which clearly is not going to work out. But I don't know. Just give me Arizona for really no reason.
I'm going to take Pittsburgh for the reason that I just kind of outlined. I keep picking against them, and they keep finding a way to win. So I'm going to pick them this week, which, I mean, that probably means that Arizona is going to win. But I'm taking Pittsburgh here. I don't know what they're doing right, but they're doing something right. And Minkah Fitzpatrick has been unbelievable since they got him. So definitely a Defensive Player of the Year candidate, especially if Pittsburgh continues to find ways to win and kind of gets into the playoffs, despite everything that has gone down there. Next one here, Seattle at Los Angeles, divisional matchup here. This is a must-win game for the Rams. This is kind of a weird one for Vikings fans because it's a lose-lose situation. If the Rams win here,
or a win-win situation.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, depending on how you look at it. Well, that's true. So if Seattle loses here, the Vikings can they have the opportunity to move up past them, I suppose, or get close. Not they have the opportunity to get closer. But if the Rams win, they potentially could narrow the deficit in the wild card race. So this is a tough one here. I think that there's a clear favorite, but this is a divisional matchup, and you never really know what can happen in those games.
Yeah, I'm picking the Rams to win this game, and it's like the fact that it's in, it's a Rams home game helps me out in believing in Jared Goff.
Yeah.
So it's kind of one of those where if good Goff shows up, I think the Rams win, but it's very possible that bad Goff shows up because he hasn't shown out for a little bit now, and I think he's due for one of those games where it's just a clunker and they lose 34-10 or something.
Yep.
So I'm picking the Rams, which is again good and bad for the Vikings, but I don't know. Again, it's a straight pick 'em. I think at least it is on my bookie here. So I don't know. I'm going with the Rams. I don't feel great about it.
I'm going to take Seattle just because they're the better team. That's really it. They got the better quarterback.
I don't think they are, though. I mean, they are, but talent-wise, it's not even close. The Rams are the more talented team.
That's true.
So,
this really is a toss-up game, especially because it is a divisional rivalry. The Rams have always played Seattle tough.
Jared Goff is such a wild card that you can't predict it. It's just impossible. He's had the highest of highs and the lowest of lows just like the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, so I guess it makes sense that we're split on this one. Final game of the week, your Monday night matchup. The NFC East once again featured in prime time. Everyone is going to be thrilled to watch the Giants, and Eli Manning makes his return to the field against the Philadelphia Eagles, who are coming off another ridiculous loss against the Miami Dolphins. Who you got?
I got Philly. This game that doesn't do it for me.
It doesn't, dude. This is ridiculous. Stop putting the NFC East every single week on Monday night.
This season is what we needed for that purpose, right? Every NFC East team is bad.
Yeah.
And hopefully that kind of carries into the scheduling for 2020. And let's maybe not put terrible teams on primetime all the time.
Yeah. I'm taking Philly as well in this game. This sucks because I watch Monday Night Football every week, and just because it's the best thing on TV on Monday nights, there just isn't that many options, and I'm stuck with this one again. And I don't. There's not even a fun. The only fun narrative here is that Eli Manning is returning, and I don't care at all. Not at all, because that's not even fun to watch. He's a dumpster fire. I guess I'll say this: if I get a Manning face out of this, it'll all be.
Oh, for sure we will.
You think so?
Oh yeah, we'll get a Manning face out of it. We get every time he plays. If they show him, he's
doing something ridiculous. It's right around that time, I believe, the original Manning face. Where he does that the crazy one, where it's his eyes are rolled up in the back of his head. That happened, I believe, it was a couple years ago. Yesterday?
I think it was in Philly.
Yeah. So I don't know. Candidate for a Manning face game, I suppose. So, anyways, that rounds up our picks for the week. Moving into our NFL lock of the week, which we're gonna have to retitle this segment after the way that we have performed here. This
I won last week.
You did win last week. I did not. You know how frustrating that was for me on Thanksgiving to be sitting there with my family, and I've got Chicago, Detroit under 39, and David Blau just comes out and throws an 80-yard touchdown to Kenny Galladay to start the game. Just ridiculous. Who you got this week?
It was David Blau versus Mitch Trubisky, and they easily hit that over. Anyway, I got the over in the Vikings-Lions game. I think I mentioned that when we were.
What's the number on that one?
43.
Oh yeah,
that seems very low considering last time these two teams played, it was a complete shootout.
It was 72 points the last time they played.
Right, and Minnesota's offense is putting up near 30 with regularity. Detroit has had success against the secondary. Those receivers have, and I mean, again, it is David Blau, but this Viking secondary is reeling. So I think it'll be, I think it was, if it was a 50, I might bet over 50 even.
Yeah, I probably would too. I mean, Vegas, every week I see there's a matchup like this where it's what is Vegas thinking? And then this game's going to end up being 24-21 or something like that. Anyway, for me this week, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to do something that I have not done this year yet. I'm going to try to shake it up a little bit. And I'm going to go with Indianapolis on the money line.
Ooh.
They are plus 140 heading against Jacksonville.
Yeah.
So, as I said during
I think it's Tampa Bay.
Right, excuse me. Yeah, Tampa Bay. As I said during our picks, I think that Indianapolis is the better team. You can make an argument, I suppose, that Tampa Bay is at least the equivalent in terms of coaching, but I really think very, very highly of Frank Reich. I think that he gets the best out of everyone, even when he's put in a bad situation. So, to me, Indianapolis should be the favorite in this game. They're the more well-rounded team. They have one of the best rosters in the NFL. Marlon Mack returns this week. Jacoby Brissett has been solid enough. You've got Zach Pascal kind of emerging as a solid number 2 if T.Y. Hilton is able to go this week. You know, the only way I see Tampa Bay winning this game is if Mike Evans and Chris Godwin go off, which it can definitely happen, don't get me wrong. But Jameis Winston is just such a buzzkill that I could...
The underdog money line is a bold play, but I like it.
It is a bold play. If I'm going to lose, I might as well go down swinging, right?
I did that week 1 with Arizona, and it pushed. So, because they tied. So, that'd be kind of sweet if they tied this week, too.
All right, folks. Well, that rounds out the show for the week. Any final thoughts that you'd like to get off here before we finish up?
The St. John's Johnnies are in the quarterfinals of the D3 playoffs this week, playing at number 3 Wheaton.
Wheaton. Who is Wheaton?
Wheaton, Illinois. I don't know. They're some program, but there's a couple NFL prospects on the Johnnies to pay attention to if they continue to light it up the way that they have.
Is Mountain Union in the D3?
They got beat. They
really?
got beat out. So it was the first time since '94 that they haven't made the quarterfinals of the D3 playoffs.
Wow. How about that? Upset. That's a stat for you right there.
Yeah. I'm following my D3 football. The Giants are still alive. So.
Excellent. All right. Well, that's a good place to finish up here. Thanks as always for listening to the show. You can find us on Daily Norseman, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, everywhere except for Spotify, basically. You can check us out on YouTube if you want to watch Drew and I be sick. Both of us have been coughing and blowing our noses throughout this show, but while using the mute button very effectively. So if you want to watch that, it's kind
treat.
of it's a show over here. So.
Plus BJ's mustache too.
I do have the mustache back. I brought it back. I quietly brought it back. I didn't announce it. It's just kind of there.
Yeah.
So, anyways, that wraps up the show. If you feel like commenting, we love to read those. I was reading through the Daily Norseman comments in the last show. I love when you guys just discuss random stuff. It's always fun for me to check out. So feel free to do that. I encourage you to do that. So thanks as always for listening, folks. And we will talk to you next week, hopefully following a Minnesota Vikings victory.